Welcome to another episode of the Inkwell podcast. I'm your host, Todd Rayner. Hey everyone, this is Editing Todd. Just wanted to make a quick note. We had some video feed issues with Terry's video, so you will see his wonderful photo. Hopefully that doesn't ruin the podcast experience for you, so please enjoy. And I have a indie writer today, and we're just going to bring Terry in here and we're going to get going on this. Terry, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So I like to ask a few questions, really to let the viewers out there, everybody know a little bit more about you, and we'll just dive right in here. What inspired you to really, start writing your own indie comics?
Actually, goes back all the way to I was a kid. My dad's a avid comic book collector, and I would, read his comic books. They were everywhere. So, and when I read the stories, even back then when I was a kid, I thought I would do this or I would do that. So I started writing my own stories, and it was just small stuff, 4 or 5 pages, but evolved over the years, and it became more specific instead of more generalized. I got more on the characters, original characters. I have about 200 original characters for this book I'm writing, and I just evolved from writing my own stories from like the big comic books, Spider-Man, stuff like that, and I did my own thing.
Yeah, that's kind of the story of a lot of indie creators. We just like reading comics growing up as a kid, and a lot of us, some of us have formal education, some of us don't, and we just really get into it and just start creating our own characters and ideas. Speaking of that, do you have any formal education in writing, or did you just kind of learn as you went?
No, I learned everything on my own. I did a lot of reading, a lot of research, um, but it's really paid off because it's really helped me to evolve in everything.
Oh, that's good. Because a lot of us like that as well. We just start writing, and I would say with the dawn of the internet, there's a lot more help out there. There's a lot more, um, I guess, references that we can look up, whether it's screenwriting, comic book writing, all the different formats and how we have to kind of put things together. Um, and I would say on that, how do you stay motivated to continue writing? You mentioned like 200 characters. That's a lot. So that's kind of a lot to write about. How do you kind of stay motivated with that?
Um, because I have a really deep passion for it. I just these stories get in my head, and I can't get them out of my head, and so I have to write them down, and it just bring the story to life. It That's what really motivates me. The first issue's about completely done, and just to see that story come to life, it's at first it's a little overwhelming for me. It was because it's like, wow, I really did this, and I've gotten a lot of compliments on it too. So that helps me too. And not that I'm fishing for compliments, but people want their honest opinion, and for the most part, people enjoy it. So hopefully, when it gets out there, people will enjoy it too. But that's what keeps me motivated. I want to entertain people, and that's a big part of my motivation. I want them to be entertained with good stories, and there's nothing like a good comic book story.
Yeah, I agree. It's I always talk with other creative people, and there's people on both sides of the coin where they feel that the art it has to be really good to carry a book, or writers tend to lean towards good writing. I'm, of the belief that it takes both. It takes, good art to catch someone's eye, but then it takes good storytelling to bring them back issue after issue, story after story. But I'm always up for a good story.
Yeah, and that's what and I have every character that I have. It's not no. There's no disposable characters. They're all a part of the story. They have, some of them are bigger than others, but everybody has a place and they have a part in their story. And I have the first 15 issues written out. So, and I have plenty. I probably have at least another for another 50. So, I have a lot of things in my mind that I'm gonna try to get out there. Hopefully.
Mhm. Yeah, well, it's more feasible now today than ever, honestly. Like, I grew up in the '90s, early '90s with the image boom. Started reading comics in the late '80s, and it was virtually impossible to publish your own comic back then. But today, there's a lot of avenues. There's a lot of resources.
There was really nothing back. I know when I was '80s and '90s when I was my heydays of reading comic books.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just great for us to be able to get out there and tell these stories to new fans, and the platforms out there support it, right? There was no in the early days of the internet, there were no websites or platforms to say like, "Hey, go read your next favorite comic."
Yeah, definitely not. No, nothing like there is. Yeah, absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah. And you mentioned the late '80s and early '90s. What were some of your biggest influences, whether they were comic book or not? What were some of your biggest influences?
Um, well, my biggest influence was always Larry Hama. Um, I just think that his run on G.I. Joe in the '80s was just unbelievable. The stories were so good. And what was crazy about it, I script everything out. This guy would write a book. He didn't know what the next one was going to be. He didn't write the stuff out. He just went by feeling. And to do that for so long, um, the way he did it, to write that story and keep it exciting, keep you like, oh my god, I can't wait till the next issue. That's the kind of reaction I want to have with my book. If people go when they finish it, they say, "Wow, I want to read the next one now. I can't wait to see it." That's the way. Larry Hama, by far, hands down, is my biggest influence, and GI Joe was a huge influence for me. And just the art style in my book is definitely '80s, '90s. A lot of people. That's the first thing they usually say is this '90s style, and it is. That's where my character design is, and that's where that comes from. But yeah, biggest influence by far Larry Hama.
Yeah, that was actually the first comics I started reading were the early issues of GI Joe, and they were phenomenal. Like that's what got me into comics was Larry Hama and GI Joe issues. So I feel you there.
Yeah.
What do you feel your biggest challenges are as an indie creator? I know, I mean, I talk to a lot of indie creators, and there's just a spectrum of challenges that we all face. But what do you see as some of the biggest challenges?
Um, Probably marketing as far as like how do I get my product from where I live to California? How do I get it to New York? How do I get it to Chicago? That's logistical problem. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. Everything else, like we said earlier, is a lot easier now. Printing them, finding people to do stuff you need done for them, inking or whatever the case may be. But I think logistics. I think that's the biggest challenge for an indie creator to really
Yeah,
get the product out there in the public's eye.
okay. Do you plan on using any crowdfunding platform or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be submitting here soon to Kickstarter.
Okay. Yeah, I think when I mentioned like platforms out there, I mean Kickstarter's one, social media is another big one as well as platforms to kind of get the word out that's out there. Kickstarter's great. I mean, because it does if with promotion, and if you're able to get build a fan base over issues, people kind of wait for that next issue to drop. They wait for your next Kickstarter, and it's really a good platform to kind of build a fan base and go from there. I mean, we just never had that, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, and you mentioned marketing as a challenge. How do you kind of navigate the marketing landscape? Is it mainly just social media, email lists, any kind of insight out there?
I would use anything I could possibly think of to get it out there. I look. I would even make guest appearances and stuff, to talk about it. But whatever it takes, really.
Yeah, it's kind of where we're at. I mean, there's so many different sites out there, sources out there that we can promote stuff on, even digital platforms. Once the book is finished, you mentioned like logistics of like the shipping and just getting your book to different places around the world. But with the digital platform, it's a lot easier for fans to kind of read your book, and then, you know, you launch a Kickstarter, and then they can, support that physical book there. But yeah, you send me the cover for the first issue that you're working on, and we'll dive into this, and you can go ahead and explain everything that's going on here. So let's pull that up here and dive in. All right. So this is Project Stranglehold, first issue. Tell us all about it.
Well, Stranglehold is basically born from 9/11, and he was brought in more or less like a super soldier, given special abilities. His is the ability to slow time, which makes him seem like he's superhumanly fast. Very, he's one of a kind as far as that goes. But he's part of a strike force. His name is code name is Stranglehold. He's the code for the group that he's part of. An anti-terrorist group is Project Stranglehold, and he works with his partner of his called Blackjack. And that's what they do. They take down terrorists, and in the process of my book, there's going to be neo Nazis and werewolves and vampires, um, megalomaniacs, people bent on world domination, all the good stuff. Great. One thing that I've been complimented on in my book is the action is really good. That's one thing I think is really key to any great book is to have great action in it, because after all, that's what we're looking for in a comic book mostly. But yeah, that's the gist of Stranglehold. He's part of an anti-terrorist group that's protecting the world from the bad guys.
Yeah, I've said this before, but and I'll say it forever because I think it's important for fans out there to know, or just people in general. Like it's as an indie creator, as an indie writer, artist, it's important for us to take maybe something familiar and then put our own personal spin on it, or a spin that's a little bit different. And I think that helps attract new readers. I think it helps attract buzz around something, because when you're able to put that twist on it, it helps it separate it from everything else out there. You mentioned like 200 characters. Are a lot of those characters going to show up in this issue, or are they like they're going to show up in other issues?
They'll be spread out throughout the book. There's a progression of the storylines that I have. That, like I said, I've wrote the first 15 issues, and there's still probably over 100 characters I haven't even incorporated. But like, they all have a place. They all have a part of the story. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, some of them are more key. But you'll the thing about it is that you'll never know who's who. You think there's somebody's a good guy, but he ends up being a bad guy. Bad guy ends up being a good guy. That's the things that are behind in the stories that I try to make more interesting, is doing things like that.
Yeah, it's always having dynamic characters, interesting characters, and that's a lot of characters. How do you how do you kind of keep them all straight in your head?
Well, as I developed them over the years, um, they've changed dramatically from what they originally were. I have some of my original drawings from when I was younger, and they've dramatically changed. But I don't know how I do it, but I just know every one of them, and I know everyone what their role is, what their part is in the story. Now some of them die, and but that's a part of life, and that's why I try to keep the realistic side of it too. It's of course it's fantasy, but um, you know most of them are groups. The evil guys have their groups, and for the most part, that's where all the characters are come from. The majority of them, I'd say probably more than half, are the villain groups.
Oh, okay. Um, you mentioned having some of the your early artwork. Are you doing any of the art for this book, or are you sourcing it out?
Well, no, I source out the art for that, but my character design, I do my own character designs, like names and costumes I designed. Um,
Okay. And you send those to the artist, and then they just kinda you let them kinda do what they need to do to make it as close to what you originally posted.
yeah, I let them. I let them. They they changed a little bit. I give them that. I never want an artist to be specific. Like you has to be like this, or I want them to have their freedom to interpret things too. So and that's one of the things that they do, and I like it.
Yeah, that's important. I think as a writer myself and someone who publishes indie comics, working with different artists, I agree with you. I feel it's important to give artists their artistic freedom to maybe put their spin on something, although they keep it close to what the original design is or as best they can. But I think I agree with you. I wouldn't want to like put any strings attached to like an artist and their ability to what they can do with the characters.
Yeah, and they're more. I think they're a little more zealous to do the story because they can. They have a. I have a. Everybody has a picture. When you look at a script, you read a storyline. You read panel one, and everybody has what a different. It could be similar, but everybody has a different vision. So, I want them to interpret their vision of it, not mine. I'm going to give you the basics. Just you do your thing, and they deliver. Um, there's a two. I had J.C. Grande. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yes.
He's a great artist. He did the art. He did the art for issue number one. He had other
Okay.
projects, so he couldn't continue on with me. But I have an Italian guy that's completed issue number two. I have to have it lettered, and it's going to be.
Okay.
Also, another thing about the book is it's a color cover, but it's a black and white. And people ask me all the time, why not color? It is a superhero comic book. Yes, it's true, but I've always liked the old school underground black and white comics like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Zen Intergalactic Ninja. Those just I love those books, and that's the style that I like. And it's still even in black and white, it comes across really well. But J.C. Grande did the first one, and an Italian fellow did the second one for me.
Nice. Yeah, and that's I agree with you. I do love those books. I grew up reading Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, watching cartoon. For better for worse, I love the movies. I think that's maybe more nostalgia of why I like them versus them actually being good movies. Uh, but yeah, also Zen, love Zen. Grew up reading that. And even me, like I think there's a level of artwork that can carry a black and white book. Not all artwork is suited for black and white comics. So it's just finding that right mix of art versus going black and white.
And if people want to know
It,
what the main character Stranglehold really is, I always say he's like a mix between Deathstroke, um, Snake Eyes, and Captain America. That it's a combination of all of them. You take because I've taken a little piece of each one and put them into him.
Mhm.
But I don't
Yeah,
do that
I
to
think
cheat
that's
or take some. I give it
yeah,
homage. That's homage for me. It's not
yeah.
plagiarism, but it's people can see. Oh, he's paying homage to these people.
Mhm. I think that's what a lot of us do is, and I would even say, Stan Lee probably did that. There wasn't as many characters in Stan's time, but I'm sure he had his influences from stuff that he probably grew up in reading. Um, and I've done the same thing with my characters. Like, there's influences in my characters, and I think that's totally fine because you're putting your own spin on it. You're making it your own thing, and yeah. Is there a timeline on when first issue is going to be out?
I am hoping be the first of the year.
Okay.
I really think that that's really reasonable.
All right. Well, yeah, I definitely look forward to this. I mean, it looks fun. JC does some really great artwork. Did he do the interiors as well as the cover?
Yes, he did. Yep,
Nice.
he did the whole book. Yeah, um,
Nice.
excellent artist. The guy's great.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, he did a pinup. He just I was promoting like stuff I'm working on, and he just threw me like, "Hey, I'd love to do a drawing of your character," and I was like, "Okay." So like, it's just he seems like a really nice guy, but yeah, really look forward to this issue.
Yeah, so I would like to send you a link for a Kickstarter if you want to
Yeah.
check it out once it gets put on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's what I'm all about. That's what this whole podcast is all about, is really having the fans out there hear your story, hear creator story, how they got into the industry, whatever industry that is, promoting their work. And, always happy to share and promote, what people are working on.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. It's nice and it's helpful to get the word out there. To me, it's like bands touring. You know, you got to get your name out there, and that's how you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. There's always the opening bands that no one has heard of, and sometimes those opening bands blow up and become the next big thing. So yeah, you never know.
No, you
Never
don't.
know.
You have no idea.
But yeah, no, I mean, again, really look forward to this. It's been interesting to hear how you got into comics and writing and that kind of stuff. Really cool looking cover. And happy to promote this when it's out there. And I will see you all on the next episode.